The following is a project of our nonprofit newsroom. Support Midcoast Morning and local journalism today at chly.ca/donate. Local news doesn't survive without local support.
Hello and welcome to Midcoast Morning. I'm Joe Pugh. The Island Corridor Foundation is looking at regional uses for the land that used to host the Esquimalt and Nanaimo Railway. CEO Thomas Bevan spoke to Nanaimo City Council on Monday night, asking for the city's planners to keep the corridor in mind as they map out the future of the city. The Island Corridor Foundation is a federally registered charity established for the purposes of owning and managing the former E&N corridor on Vancouver Island. Its board of directors is made up of representatives from the various First Nations and regional district governments, bisected by the rail line. Passenger service along the corridor ended in 2011. Some sections of the track in and around Nanaimo are still used for freight. I spoke with Bevan about the reasons for his presentation to council.
My name is Thomas Bevan, and I'm the CEO of the Island Corridor Foundation. I'm still a relatively new Vancouver Islander, 1.5 years, and living in the beautiful city of Nanaimo. And I come from an urban planning background and worked on projects with BC Housing and Van City. And now I'm looking at this incredible spine that connects so many communities here on the island.
What was the motivation behind appearing before Nanaimo City Council this week with an update on the rail corridor and Nanaimo?
Yeah, well, the corridor is top of mind for many people on Vancouver Island and what the future is going to hold. And so for the past about 2 years, a shared vision project has been underway with the Island Corridor members, our 14 First Nation and 5 regional district owners. And it's up to them to see what our future is. And so I wanted to share with City Council and Mayor what's happening up and down the island, and in particular, as it relates to the linear city of Nanaimo, how we might be able to take advantage of this opportunity.
And there was a bit of an undertone to the presentation. You spent a lot of time talking about various light rail projects. You mentioned one from your old town of Kitchener. You talked about a project in Ottawa. Can you tell me how much of a possibility is the idea of the corridor in cities becoming a light rail? How do you see that?
Yeah, it's all about what people want. And if we don't have the imagination, nothing's going to happen. If we do have the imagination, I think everything can happen, given that there's a business case for things and it's the type of land use and future that we want to see. And so, my old hometown, Kitchener, Ontario, they have been working on this for, I think a good part of my life, envisioning their region as a focused space that the farmland around is preserved. The town centers are filled with people, life, activity, and it's happening. I was back there about a year and a half ago now, and the Ion light rail line goes through the main town centers and the universities and Waterloo, Kitchener, and it has been tremendous in the way that it has created a spine again on King Street. And Kitchener, it's a little bit bigger than Nanaimo, but I still think that Nanaimo has so many similarities with Kitchener. It's a kind of post-industrial town. Kitchener had a real hard time with all the factories closing down, and in the 90s trying to reimagine its decaying kind of donut structure. And that's what the Ion project did. And now there's so much excitement and reinvestment into the kind of sprawling parking lot spaces that are becoming wonderful, complete communities. And so when I hear about the work happening at Woodgrove or Country Club, I see so much possibility, and our corridor is so close to so many of the town centers that Nanaimo sees as becoming the places that people will live, work, and play for the next generations of this town.
And you suggested that farther down south on the island, you're maybe further along in this kind of process. You're closer to coming out with a business case in, say, Langford. Could you explain?
Yeah, Langford, I think it's fair to say, and the CRD is a little bit busier and maybe a bit more metropolitan than Nanaimo, but I think that Nanaimo punches well above its weight, and it's an important center, and I like to joke or tease it's closer to Vancouver now with the Hello, with 70 minutes to downtown. It's incredible. Nevertheless, I think it's absolutely ripe for major investment in the CRD, for rapid transit, and the Colwood Crawl is everyone's headache now every day, it seems. The CRD is congested and they need a solution fast. And so we're seeing a lot of momentum right now, building upon the kind of bus rapid work that's underway. But could an LRT in the Langford area and beyond going into town be in the cards in the more kind of immediate time frame? I think there's something to be had, but we need to all work together to make that happen.
How would the potential of light rail projects within cities, how would that interact with what the Island Rail Corridor was originally, a rail line between Victoria, essentially, and planned all the way up to Campbell River, the possibility of inter-community connection?
Totally, Joe. I think that's a really great distinction about inner city transportation and intercity transportation, and inner city being, say, like the streetcars of Toronto or many other places over in Europe, and a number of streetcars, say, like in Portland, have been growing over the years. And it's a much more different kind of lighter approach, and crossings and what have you different, where things that go fast between cities have to have a different physical parameter. Nevertheless, the rail gauge is the same. And so back to my hometown, Kitchener, Ontario, that actually goes on in the middle of the street, down King Street and Charles Street, but it also goes on freight lines that are still actually used out to the University of Waterloo. And so the way tram train technology has gotten to is that you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. Does the same thing make sense on the island? We have to get into the details for that. But one thing that we really are seeing in this shared vision project with our members is that we have to embrace regional differences, at least for now. And the corridor makes sense right now in some places and maybe less sense in others, and that's okay. So let's focus in where it makes sense first, and we'll get to the places that, maybe it's not the right fit, or maybe it never will be a fit, and we'll cross that bridge later.
A number of First Nations, they are members of the Island Corridor Foundation. The Snanawas has worked to get some of the land that was in the corridor back. Can you tell me where we're at in general when it comes to the Island Corridor and First Nations and reversionary rights?
Yeah, the nations are the rights holders and our members. They are very significant drivers of everything that can happen on this corridor, in particular where the corridor bisects the nation's reserves and where reversionary rights exist. And so for quite some time, our organization and board has held the motion and adopted that we will advance reversion where reversionary rights exist. And so Stanaos is a great example of that. And the land's gone back, and the nation has deemed that, the old rail was not in a good shape. And so they're using it for their nation to get to the Stanaos market, and it's great, and we really appreciate and completely stand behind their discretion. And now in other areas that the corridor bisects, we need to be working hand in hand at the nation's leadership.
Have circumstances like that contributed to the idea of light rail being something within certain communities as opposed to between certain communities being something that you're focused on, it seems, trying to advance more right now?
Well, I think it's fair to say the regionalism and focusing where it works, where it's wanted, and not trying to push it where people don't want it. That's okay. We need to listen. And so I do think that, in Nanaimo, going from Sandstone, maybe even up to Woodgrove, that's a really important linear corridor. There's a lot of people who live beside there. There's also a lot of parking lots, which would make fantastic new villages, complete communities, development opportunities, community centers. And so is there an opportunity for the corridor to really dial into even just the geographic specifics of the city of Nanaimo?
Is there a certain density or population threshold that you think Nanaimo would have to hit for this to be something that would make sense financially?
It's a difficult question because it's all about, what are we doing? And, if it's going to be a SkyTrain in the air, then very expensive. Nanaimo, I don't know if we're going to see that in my lifetime, but if it's a more kind of scrappy first step, and I mentioned in the council presentation to the city about the O-Train Phase 1, the Trillium Line in Ottawa, that was a very scrappy first step of an 8-station LRT, and I believe it was $23 million. And it, has grown substantially since then. But I think, and forgive me for this, but I think Nanaimo is having a little bit of a Kitchener moment right now. And potentially we can set the track for a focused future of this town like Kitchener-Waterloo has. I do think that the ambitions of growth in some of the town centers and the number of people that are coming to the island, coming to Nanaimo because it's only 70 minutes from Vancouver, it's starting to get to the point where it might actually make sense. And especially as traffic grows and grows, we're not quite at the Colwood Crawl yet at Nanaimo, but if you get stuck at some of the lights at Jinglepock Road or Northfield in the morning, traffic is actually becoming on people's radar in Nanaimo, and so that means we need solutions for transportation.
Now, there is still a little bit of freight using a section of the tracks in Nanaimo. How does that influence your plans?
Yeah, and like I said, the two can coexist. The most important thing is that the rail gauge, the width of the rail is actually the same in light rail and freight, as long as it's properly scheduled, can be compatible together. So we don't see this as an and or thing. We just really think that we need to be relevant to the communities, listen, and be scrappy.
And you mentioned at the meeting that you have had conversations with Chief Mike Wise. Nanaimo has been at some of the meetings with all of the stakeholders. That those conversations, it's kind of the vibe you've gotten is that they have a lot of projects going on right now, but they're open to chatting more about what this could be.
Yeah, and Nanaimo is our member, and we take direction by them. And so, like I said, they're very busy, and we want to be very respectful of that. We think it's a really important topic, but Nanaimo has so many other important topics. So we will take our direction and work together whenever the time is right. But also what came up in the council meeting yesterday was around the Duke Point Ferry expansion. And that's a super exciting project that I think Nanaimo is very much involved in, and how that port has all of the recipes for success. If we're needed, we'd love to be a part of any solution that Nanaimo is working towards.
Midcoast Morning is part of our nonprofit newsroom project, supported by listeners like you. Keep this program on the air by funding it today with a monthly sustaining donation at chly.ca/donate. We've got tote bags and shirts if you need an incentive.
The Island Corridor Foundation's CEO made a pitch for Nanaimo's planners to keep the potential of the old rail line in mind as they map out the future of the city. Thomas Bevan made a presentation Monday in front of Nanaimo City Council. On today's program, I've been speaking with him about the current state of efforts to make use of the corridor that once hosted the Esquimalt and Nanaimo Railway. The provincial government gave $18 million to regional districts and to First Nations to study the future of the corridor. It was reported earlier this year that a deadline had been extended for that process. Is there anything you can tell me about where that is at and what will come out of that? What will be kind of reported back?
Yeah, there's still few more months to February, and this is a really complicated topic that I think we have to appreciate that it's going to be dynamic, and to say that February, all questions will be answered, I don't think that's realistic and fair. This is embedded in nuance and sensitivity, and we need to work with that. And like I said, we absolutely need to walk first with the topic of reversion, where reversionary rights apply, and then work from that base. And so whether or not that means that there's a few LRTs on the island where it makes sense, and maybe a few water pipes and a few nature paths, that could still be very viable. Maybe even a few high rail buses. And you might have seen we had a little demonstration in Port Alberni the other week with a high rail bus from Lillooet, and it was a fantastic conversation starter.
There have also been a number of, you'll see editorials, you'll hear from advocates of turning the corridor into some kind of trail. And I'm wondering, what's your perspective from where you're sitting at the Island Corridor Foundation on those calls?
Oh, I love to bike. I'm a big proponent of bike infrastructure. I've actually biked to Campbell River and San Francisco. And I didn't bike back from either of those places because it was quite a bike ride. I think that bike infrastructure is super important. And in the city of Nanaimo, we're so excited and pleased with the progress we've been making on the Princess Street prototype, we're calling it. And it's a short little nature path beside rail from Hecate Street to Columbia. And we've actually this week started our push to 7th Street. And I think we're really showing how simple it can be to get a first step. And that's what we're about, taking first steps and getting that low-hanging fruit. So I think that more trails are absolutely possible, particularly in these easy places where the corridor is wide, and we can put a nature path there. I think the first phase of the Princess Street prototype took us 9 days. And so I was talking with another group recently about the Nanaimo River, and I'm a big fan of taking a swim in the Nanaimo River, and I would love to have someday a nature path beside the rail that could get all the way to the Nanaimo River, maybe sooner than we think.
What would you want the planning department in Nanaimo to do with the corridor? How would you want them to work the corridor into their plans absent any kind of certainty on this? Yeah, well, especially in the area that from Woodgrove to Sandstone, I think that we need to find ways to make the corridor featured in the plans. And I brought up in the council meeting about the Beltline in Atlanta. I think that's a fantastic plan that has provided the substantial amount of space that provides for a fantastic linear urban park, other types of blue-green infrastructure, and an LRT system. And so I think having development that corresponds to this type of real funnel of city building is really important policy. And so when you're over in the lower mainland, places like Lougheed Highway or the 200 Street corridor or Fraser Highway or even Broadway, these
corridor visions are very much visions of new development densities that are going hand in hand with major transit infrastructure. And that's, I think, the best practice. And I see so much good work with the planners in the city of Nanaimo and with the Reimagine Nanaimo efforts. We need that one next step to really do justice to the corridor, that it could be used for transportation. So let's make our land use plans fit that dream.
In the recent era of talk about nation building projects, have you had any kind of meaningful engagement with the federal government about the corridor as a whole?
Yeah, I went to Hamilton for the Steel Town Summit a couple weeks ago, and it was hosted by Minister Chrystia Freeland, and she invited us, and yeah, they're looking for projects. And so we are the west coast of this nation. And in light of some pretty substantial currents that are moving out east in Quebec and Ontario, with talk about a high-speed rail from Quebec City to Toronto, and I think they're talking about that as somewhere in the order of $100 billion project. And yeah, those are big numbers, big projects, exciting, but we're a lot simpler than that. And so could we be relevant to Ottawa? I think so. And the MPs who are on the island are doing their best to implore Ottawa to take Vancouver Island seriously. And we're getting good reception.
You suggesting there that perhaps the Island Rail Corridor could be like almost a test case for that much larger project in the Quebec City to Windsor corridor?
At least priming the pump. Big projects are hard to do and they take a long time to get going. And we're a big project for Vancouver Island standards, but yeah, when it comes to Canada, I think we're the little railway that could maybe. And so I think as a nice quick win for Canada, I'd love to see something happen. Again, maybe not the whole thing, but in parts where it makes sense. Why not?
What would you encourage people to look out for? People who have been following this for a long time, wondering about the future of the corridor, haven't heard any news. Each year they know that the condition of the remaining infrastructure gets a little worse. What do you think is something that they can expect to hear? When do you think they can expect to get some kind of maybe positive momentum, some certainty around that?
Yeah, well, I think the positive momentum is growing, and we need people now more than ever to say what they want. Your elected officials do listen, and if we as islanders don't say we want urban infrastructure in the places that it makes sense, we want to have traffic issues of growth starting to get the investment that they deserve, we're not going to get it. So please tell your elected officials, your municipal, provincial, and federal officials, take Vancouver Island seriously. Vancouver Island needs urban infrastructure, and we have a corridor that can be used in places that our members want it to be used. So please, we only can do this together. And we ask for people who want to see it, ask your elected officials to take Vancouver Island seriously.
There's also a group out there called the Island Rail Corporation, which is a privately held corporation that is trying to advance Island Rail. And I'm wondering if you can tell me about whether the Island Corridor Foundation has any kind of a relationship with that group.
No, we have no affiliation with that group. I'm aware of them, but we haven't interacted very much. They have a new board chair, I believe, Dr. Matthew Vickers, and he has an excellent resume. They're very much a proponent of singular rail solution up and down the island, which, maybe could make sense at one point in time. Nevertheless, with the Shared Vision project, the kind of regionality that I've spoke to is really what comes first for us. Our members come first, and for the time being, the Island Corridor is owned by our members, and that's who we take direction from. So Island Rail Corporation has no affiliation with our foundation, but they have been campaigning for certain uses, and it's interesting to see.
So the thing for people to take away is that right now the Corridor Foundation is looking at advancing these kind of regional pockets of the corridor as places where development could happen in the shorter term. And you were speaking with Nanaimo City Council to kind of encourage the planning department here in Nanaimo to take that into account as we move forward.
Exactly.
Is there anything else you think it's important to bring to the conversation today on this?
No, just really appreciate your interest, Joe. And let's row together. And please, tell your local politicians what you want. Let's stand together as Vancouver Islanders, and the future is exciting.
Thomas Bevan, thank you so much for taking the time.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Thomas Bevan is CEO of the Island Corridor Foundation. At Monday night's council meeting, Councillor Hilary Eastmere announced that she would be bringing forward a motion to the next council meeting related to the Island Corridor Foundation and Nanaimo planning. Here is a clip of her reading what that motion will be.
As part of the city plan review, direct staff to seek opportunities and create policies that support and advance planning of transit-oriented development centres, including Country Club and Woodgrove, in a way that provides clear connections to the Island Corridor, which may be used for corridor-related transit in the future.
That's our show for the day. Thank you for joining me. I'm Joe Pugh, host and producer of Midcoast Morning. Jesse Woodward is our executive producer, and Arby Frew is our technical advisor. Our theme song is First One by local Nanaimo band Waste Management. If you have a story you'd like us to cover, email us at news@chly.ca. That's all for now. I'll talk to you on another Midcoast Morning.
Midcoast Morning would not be possible without the funding of the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radio Meters program and generous listeners like you. Support our news, current affairs, and arts and cultural programming through our nonprofit newsroom project today by making a monthly sustaining donation at chly.ca/donate. This program gives thanks to the Snuneymuxw First Nation as we broadcast and podcast from their traditional territory. Thanks for listening.